What a funny scene, right? So Despicable Me 4 has been released, and today I'm gonna be showing you the full breakdown of the movie and all the Easter eggs you missed in it. So without further ado and wasting much time, let's get into it, guys. So it all begins when Gru drives like crazy to get to the promotional meeting of his villain school and goes with his three very cool minions, whom he warns that since he's now a part of an agency, the AVL or Anti-Villain League, they would camouflage themselves at the promotional party, trying to capture Maxime, who was the most evil villain of them all. But as expected, upon arriving at the party, the distracted minions start playing, and when Maxime sees Gru, he makes fun of him in front of everyone, telling him that apart from Cowboy, he was the worst villain in history. And then someone arrives, Maxime's girlfriend. She was the popular girl at her school, and she shows a lot of arrogance because she doesn't even greet Gru. Then an old lady appears who was actually the director of the villain school. That night, she was there to reward the former student. The most evil villain that year turned out to be Maxime, who was also the favorite student, and while the unfortunate Maxime gives his vainglorious speech, he tells the rest of the villains that he loved cockroaches because they practically managed to survive since the beginning of time, and that is why Maxime himself has decided to mutate and become a disgusting human cockroach. Very crazy, and upon seeing this, Gru arrests him in name of the Anti-Villain League, and after confronting the powerful villain Maxime, they give the signal to several AVL agents to raid him, and then although the cockroach fights against them, the crew ends up capturing it. However, the powerful Maxime frees himself for a moment to threaten the protagonist himself, telling him that he would find a way to get revenge one day very soon. After this, Gru returns home where he looks very happy, sharing his days with his wife Lucy, his three daughters, and his little baby, who's very happy to see his mother. But when Gru is near, he becomes very moody all of a sudden, and even upset, even though Gru always tells him that he loves him very much. Then we see the minions go into action to wash and change the baby's diaper, and we see a funny scene of all the minions taking care of the baby. But then, all of a sudden, Gru's his boss comes to his house and tells him that Maxime has escaped the maximum security prison. But before fleeing, he left a message for Gru, warning him to take care of himself because since he already knew where he lived, he would look for him to take revenge. So Gru tells his family that they should move out to the AVL refuge because only there they would be safe. And although his sad daughters do not want to leave him, Gru knows that it is not negotiable. So he heads with his family and his three minions to their new home, and upon arriving to the town that they would live in, they see that the neighborhood is incredibly beautiful, and although their gloomy house is not so gloomy because it looks more like an abandoned office, Gru's boss comes in and tells him that for their safety, they will have to have new identities. So Lucy will become a stylist, Gru will be a solar panel salesman, and even the little ones would also have to change their names. And before leaving the AVL, the staff recommends them not to do anything that attracts the attention of Maxime. Meanwhile, the rest of the minions are taking to the AVL headquarters, and since they were so unruly, the driver shouts to silence them, but the rebellious minions, as we know them, do not pay attention to him at all and continue with their noise and ruckus. But Maxime and his girlfriend celebrate with the cockroaches that they helped them escape from the prison, and then the villain tells them that he planned to steal Gru's baby to get revenge on him. The next day, we see that one of Gru's daughters was very upset because she didn't want to lie using her fake name. So Lucy intervenes to cheer everyone up by asking them to do their best effort in their new life, and then the minions are in charge of securing the baby in the vehicle. And in that, Gru and his daughter approach to talk to the rich neighbor who is not happy to see them at all. And suddenly his daughter, named Poppy, appears, who apart from ignoring them, tells Gru that she didn't want to be his daughter's friend, and then she looks at the protagonist with an evil smile. While this is all happening, the minions war with Gru's boss, who asks some volunteers to be his guinea pigs to test some of his new machines that would give them superpowers, or if they said no, he would eliminate them, making them explode. But although nobody knew what was going to happen, everything came out happily, and it was great for the Mega Minions because now each of them has a superpower like super strength, elasticity, laser rays, being able to fly, or become indestructible. Then we see that the family's new life was a disaster because Gru's little girl is punished for not being able to lie and use her fake name. So her older sister ends up giving the evil teacher what he deserves, and we see it in this scene right here. Plus, Gru didn't do well with the baby, who did all kinds of evil things to annoy him, and we see that the eldest daughter hated school. because her classmates kept bothering her, and on top of all of this, it turns out that Lucy brought her fake resume to a beauty salon where she was hired immediately. But when she tried to do a client's hair, she ended up burning her hair, leaving her bald and causing a fire in the entire salon. That same night, Gru goes out to throw the trash, and Poppy was right there waiting for him to tell him that she knew that his past was very shady and he was an evil villain. And since she also wanted to follow his footsteps, she threatens him by telling him that if he doesn't help him raid the villain school, she will expose it and also tell everyone that the ancient villain Gru was hiding in that town. And since the safety of his family was at stake, Gru understands that he has to help her. So the next day he looks for Poppy and discovers that she built an exact replica of the villain school, and she planned to enter there just because she wanted to steal the mascot. And although Gru warns her that it was a bad idea because that's a very fierce badger because the mascot was a badger, Poppy knows that the protagonist knows the school well and tricks him to force him to accompany her to the school. Meanwhile, the evil Maxime continued his plans for revenge, and since he wanted to steal Gru's baby, he built a giant machine shaped like a cockroach, and then we find out that this silly villain actually wanted to take revenge on Gru since he was furious because when they were both studying at the villain school, Gru made a fool of himself by singing the same song that he prepared for a long time for the talent show, and that's the whole story behind the reason why Maxime hates Gru in the first place. And going back with the minions, we can see in this scene that they were playing with their powers, and we also see that the little yellow guy who can throw lightning through his eyes can pierce through the world. After this, the head of the ABL tells the minions that they should test their powers by saving people. And although these silly little yellow guys do their best, we see that they end up risking the lives of the residents because they make a subway full of passengers almost fall into a void. They let the unfortunate criminals escape without problems. They endanger people by shooting their lasers everywhere, and they make a huge explosion right in the center. So now nobody wanted these useless minions, and they throw things at them, making them flee the town. So Gru's boss rescues them to tell them that they were going to be fired and they are no longer going to be superheroes. Going back to Gru, we see that night he had no one to leave the baby with, and he takes him to the job. And after traveling in Poppy's balloon, they both arrive at the old villain school where the clumsy minions give Gru the wrong briefcase that was full of diapers and pure baby things. However, since Gru has no other options, he manages to open a window through which they enter the school, and although the janitor almost covers them, the protagonist skillfully saves the situation and gets everyone safely in the principal's office, where, thanks to the intrepid baby, they can enter without touching the lasers. Once there, the protagonist frees the wild badger, and although there was an antidote to sedate him, Gru ends up accidentally taking the entire dose, and this makes him drowsy, preventing him from walking. And to make things worse, while Poppy was escaping from the badger, she activates the alarm that wakes the old lady director, and they end up locking them in that place. After this, the badger runs to attack the baby, who actually manages to calm him down by giving him a porridge. And in that, the old principal arrives where they were and begins to chase them with her fast wheelchair all over the place. And despite this, they manage to escape safely, and the little old lady ends up crashing into the wall while they flee from the school in a flying car. And when they get home, they see that Poppy is very happy because she finally has the badger that she always wanted. So she thanks Gru for that fun adventure, telling him that from now on, the secret would be safe with her and she will never say it to nobody else. But in a turn of events, we see that the old school principal calls her favorite student Maxime to tell him that thanks to the tracker the badger had, she managed to find Gru's location. And upon hearing this, the unfortunate Maxime flies to the enemy's house in a hurry. The next day, we discover that Poppy has changed a lot, and now she has become friends with Gru's daughters. And when they are playing in the protagonist's house, they see the old headmistress arrive, and since the badger is scared of her, Poppy takes him away from them, while the old woman enters Gru's house by force. And when the protagonist finds out what was happening, he looks for his wife Lucy to return home immediately. Since the ABL did not have more personnel, he summons the minions. And since they didn't have any work and they were lazy, they were too busy melting cheese with their laser powers. They fed birds on the beach, they took bulls on the desert, they played with some bees or bet on the slot machines. For his part, when Gru and Lucy get home, they see that the director was telling her children that the protagonist stole the badger, and since Lucy knows that their children and Gru were in danger, she was brave enough and attacked the old woman, and then his family did the same, neglecting the little baby. The heartless Maxime arrived right at this moment, and seeing that the baby was alone, he and his girlfriend took the opportunity to take him away. Seeing that the ship was leaving without Gru being able to do anything, but thankfully Poppy appears in her flying car, with which she manages to reach them. But then Gru manages to get into Maxime's ship. He ends up slipping away and blocking their vision, which makes them crash. Then we see the unfortunate Maxime turn the baby into a flying cockroach like him, and he becomes the villain. Yes, Gru's own son becomes the villain in Despicable Me 4, and since the little one still detested Gru because he believed that that was his real dad, then we see that Maxime's girlfriend wants to crush Gru with her giant ship, but since it was too heavy, it ends up sinking. And when Gru sees this, he confronts Maxime, demanding that he returns his son. And as the ruthless villain that he is, he tries to flee with the baby, but Gru manages to stop him, seeking to defeat him. But the heartless Maxime keeps hitting Gru, and we see him falling from the heights, but he holds onto a bar and he looks at his baby from a distance and tells him in such a great face and a parenthood manner that he loves him very much. Dad loves you, causing the baby to calm out of the trance that he was in and remember who his real dad was, and then give Maxime what he deserves. Gru also gathers the strength to hit him and ends up throwing him from the same heights that he was trapped in. And although Maxime fell, hitting him hard, he miraculously managed to get up, but then the minions appear at the end, attacking him with their balls, making them sting him with their bees, throwing melted cheese at him and making the birds dirty him. And suddenly the rest of the family arrives and we can see them finally reunited with him. Here we see Gru becoming very emotional because he just said his first words, which was dad. And since everything was already resolved, the family returns home where Dr. Nefario arrives to make the baby return to normal states. And we discover that now the baby has learned to love Gru. But after all of this adventure, Gru goes to the prison to visit Maxime and confess to him that yes, he actually stole his song from the school's talent show, and he did it to get revenge on him because he was embarrassed because Maxime embarrassed him by dropping his pants at school. And when Maxime hears this, he gets so upset and breaks down. It makes him so angry that he competes again, singing that same song at the prison's talent show, and then they make their presentation that makes everyone dance at the prison, and we see that the minions arrive to support Gru, singing the happy melody. From what a great ending!